Hello, Foundry folks. Another week, another lesson. And this week, this Sunday, we're going to celebrate our graduates. It's going to be a good time. And I was thinking that this would be a good series to kind of look at over the next several weeks, something called Living in the World. Now, you know you're doing that, right? Breathe in, breathe out, means you're alive. If you can do that with me, you're doing very well. But it's more than just being alive in the world. It is finding your way. It is, how do I live in this world? What kind of priorities do I have? Direction do I have? In fact, I'm going to talk about that a little bit on Sunday to our graduates and to all of our students that are here. And I'm looking forward to it. But it's something that no matter what age you are, it is essential, because you are alive in this world, but you are making a living. And not just, when we talk about usually, how do you make your living? Well, I'm a teacher, or I'm a doctor, or I work on the highway, or yeah, that's how you make a living, but it's really not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, how do you live? How do you place your life into this world? What happens to this world as a result of your living in it? How's it changed? How are you changed? Is the world changing you, or are you actively working to change this world? You see, those are kind of questions that we have. And it's difficult to answer, and especially at your age, as you're just beginning that march to be on your own. It's a critical question. How are you living in the world? So let me just give you a few thoughts. Nothing very detailed today. Maybe we'll get a little more into it in the coming weeks, but let me just give you a word that really is a very important word for you as you are beginning this trek of living in the world. And the word is this: calling. Calling. A lot of times we use that word in my profession. I am a pastor, a professional Christian, if you will. I don't know if there is such a thing, but one of the things I learned very early on, have known for a long time, is that to be a pastor or a minister in whatever capacity, in a full-time position where you literally give your life to that, it is called a calling. And by that, we don't mean that one night I woke up and I heard, Larry. Didn't hear that. That's not what I heard. It was a sense, however, very real, that God said, here's what I want you to do with your life. In the ministry, I want you to become a pastor. Now, I wasn't a pastor. I was a professor at the time in a Christian college, having the time of my life, really, enjoying every day. It's something I really love to do. But the more I studied, the more I prayed, and the more I looked into it, the more I thought about it, the more I talked about it with my wife. We had a little baby at the time. I felt I needed to leave one place in teaching and go to a radically different place in ministry. I gave up teaching and went there. Now, that's a calling for sure. But I believe if you're going to be someone who is going to contribute in this life, in this world, if you're going to live so that you live in a way that you affect positively the world that's around you, you're also going to experience calling. Now, it may not be the same way, and I understand that, and maybe there is a difference in calling, but still, I want you to know that you are called. Now, you've experienced calling all the time, right? Someone rings you up on your cell phone. What are they doing? They are calling you. That's easy. Someone sees you out in the crowd somewhere and they yell, "Hey, Larry!" They're calling me when that happens. Your parent or your pastor or your youth worker says, listen, I really think you need to pay attention to what I'm saying. They're basically calling you. Now, you realize there are some ways that we approach that calling, right? If someone's calling on your phone, you have an opportunity. When you pick it up, you have two buttons, at least on my phone. Decline, accept. And if I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to hear you calling me, I'm too busy, I'm angry with you, I'm disappointed, I don't want to hear what you have to say, I got something that's more important, I'm playing the 10th level of Minecraft, whatever that is. Decline. Someone may be calling you out hey, come over here. And you have the opportunity to answer that call or pretend you didn't hear it and keep walking. You've never done that, right? We've all done that. Or someone in authority says to you, listen, I need you to listen to me. This is really important. And you're saying, I'm listening. Bloop, bloop. In one ear, out the other, you hear it. It's hitting your auditory nerve, but you're not listening. They're calling to you, but it means nothing to you. Now, that's in everyday life. But of course, we're talking about spiritual things. Do you understand that God calls you every day? Every day. Multiple times in the day. Do you remember Adam and Eve? When Adam and Eve decided to go their own way, eat the fruit, didn't care what God had to say. They had heard God, but they didn't pay attention to him. So basically, they deleted his call. Do you remember what happens? They go hide, try to cover themselves. And God comes and he says, hey, Adam, where are you? Now, God knew where he was, but Adam didn't know where he was in relation to God. And so God says, will you now hear me? I'm calling to you. Will you pay attention? See, it's the same question that we experience today. God calls us through the Bible. That is, if you read it. Prayer. That is, if you pray. Through the pastors talking. That is, if you're at church. Oh. You see, God calls, and you have a choice. Decline, accept. But much of the time, what we have done in our actions is we've not even given God a place to call us. Right? We're waiting for some kind of extraterrestrial thing to happen to us. That God's going to, with a blazing, smoking gun, He's going to somehow shoot a spiritual bullet in our lives. We're going to say, whoa, I feel you, God. No, it doesn't happen that way. In fact, there's some real practical things. Can I give you a couple of verses? Living in the world, Jesus talks to the disciples just before he's to go to the cross. And listen to what he says. In John 15, verse 18 and 19, he says, if the world hates you, remember that it hated me first. Now, wait a second. Jesus saying, living in this world as one of my followers is a distinct possibility that the world simply won't get you. They won't get you at all. And as a result, you're going to be cast away from those that are in power, that are in the in crowd, and they might even hate you. He said, it's okay, because when I've called you and you've answered the call, you're like me, not like them. And a lot of times it doesn't fit. Then he goes on, he says, the world would love you as one of its own if you belong to it. But you're no longer part of the world. Now listen to this. I called you to come out of the world, and so it hates you. I called you. I chose you. I said, hey, come follow me. And most of you that are watching this, probably all of you that are watching this, said, that was me. I knew God was someone who loved me, and I realized I needed to be saved, redeemed. I knew I was lost, and I realized that God sent his son to die on the cross in my place. And by faith, I received the gift of eternal life. I prayed that prayer, and I know I'm the child of God. But every day, God is calling, you are my child. You are like me. Follow after me. That's the calling. One of the things that is probably a distinct characteristic of someone who has been called and answered that call, not declined it, is that they feel less comfortable in the world, more comfortable around other true believers. So I got to ask you the question, how do you feel about that question? Are you more comfortable in the world, or are you more comfortable and feel connected with other believers? Here's another thing Paul says in Ephesians. So now you Gentiles, that's us, are no longer strangers and foreigners. You are citizens along with all of God's holy people. You are members of God's family. Did you get that? So that when God calls you, when God's family calls you, and you decline, ignore, something's not right. There's a calling there that's going to give you direction on how to live in this world. And if you say, nah, I got this, be careful. Because the end result may be disastrous. Because living in the world is one step, one decision, one choice, one calling, one answering after another. One more verse. Dear friends, I warn you as, and he quotes this, it's not just air quotes, temporary residents and foreigners, to keep away from worldly desires that wage against your very souls. He says I used to have a friend, he's still my friend, in Indiana. In fact, he worked with youth. He was a great guy, Mark. And I knew how he'd answer it, so I always asked him. I said, Mark, how in the world are you doing? He said, I'm in the world, but not of the world. That was his stock answer. I'm in the world, but not of the world. And explain it this way. If you're in a boat on Priest Lake, that's a good thing. To have a boat on the lake, nothing wrong with that. But what happens if there is a major leak in the boat and now the lake is in the boat and it's sinking? That's not good. See, you're designed to be in this world, but you're not designed that the world is in you. That's why he says you're a temporary resident and a foreigner. You don't fit in here. You're a citizen of heaven. That's who you are. If you've been called and you accept the call. So, how are you going to live in this world? Well, the first step is you're called, but then what will you do with that call? Well, I look forward to seeing you on Sunday. It's going to be a great time. I'll be here Wednesday night also. So you that are here, looking forward to seeing you. Let's study this stuff together, okay? Thanks so much. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.